The pavement was cold and unforgiving against her cheek, a gritty reminder that some things never change. Around her, the laughter was a sharp, familiar weapon, one she'd hoped time would have dulled. Three figures loomed, blocking out the golden sunset light, their blue and yellow varsity jackets like uniforms from a war she thought she'd left behind. One drew back his foot, not to kick a ball, but to kick her, a deliberate, cruel motion aimed at her ribs. The air left her lungs in a gasp that was swallowed by the cheers of the gathered crowd. This was her 10-year high school reunion, and she was, once again, the class loser. But high above, a distant thrum began to pulse, a sound that didn't belong at a luxury garden party, a sound like approaching thunder. Before we witness the shattering moment that changed everything, if you're ready for a story of breathtaking revenge and redemption, hit subscribe and join us. What unfolds next is worth every second. 10 years can feel like a lifetime, or it can feel like a single, endless afternoon. For Maya Jenkins, it had been a decade of silence, of trying to bury the echoes of locker doors slamming shut on her confidence, of whispered insults that followed her like shadows. In high school, she was the ghost in the hallway, the girl with the thrift store clothes, the quiet voice, the single mother working 2 jobs, the one who couldn't afford the right shoes for gym class. Her world was defined by absence, the absence of money, of friends, of defenders. And at the center of that absence stood 3 kings: Chad, Brett, and Kyle. The varsity jacket trio, football stars, debate team champions, the arbiters of social life at Oak Hill High. Their cruelty wasn't always physical. It was a sustained campaign of erosion. A spilled lunch tray here, a forged note from a secret admirer. There are project file deleted minutes before presentation. They made her loneliness a public spectacle. The final, defining memory was at graduation. As Maya walked across the stage, her name mispronounced by the board principal, a single loud fart noise erupted from the audience. The laughter was volcanic. Chad, smirking in his cap and gown, gave a subtle wave. She collected her diploma with trembling hands, her eyes fixed on the floor, and made a silent vow to disappear. And she did. She vanished from social media, from hometown gossip, from all of it. She worked, she saved, she endured. The invitation to the 10-year reunion arrived like a piece of shrapnel from a past explosion. It was glossy, embossed, featuring a photo of the football team hoisting a championship trophy. Chad was in the foreground, his arm around the class president. A handwritten note was paper-clipped to it, in flowing script that Maya recognized as Tiffany Ross's, the head of the planning committee. "Would especially love to see you, Maya. Let bygones be bygones. It's time to reconnect." It felt less like an invitation and more like a summons. For days, she stared at it. Part of her, the part that still felt 17, wanted to burn it. But a newer, quieter part, a part hardened by years of surviving, wondered if facing them was the only way to finally be free. She thought she had nothing to show for her life: a modest apartment, a job as a library assistant, a life of quiet solitude. She decided to go, not to triumph, but to prove to herself that she could walk through that fire and not get burned. She bought a simple, soft lavender dress from a discount store. It was pretty, but it whispered, it didn't speak. She wanted to blend in, to observe, to leave early. The reunion was held at the sprawling estate of Mr. Caldwell, Oak Hill's most affluent alumnus. Strings of fairy lights twinkled over manicured lawns, and a jazz quartet played softly near a fountain. The air smelled of expensive perfume, grilled shrimp, and nostalgia. Maya arrived by bus, walking the last half-mile up the winding driveway, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She could feel the eyes the moment she stepped onto the patio. The glances were quick, dismissive, then curious, then pitying. She saw the clusters of former classmates, their lives etched in their attire: the successful realtor, the harried mom, the aspiring actor. And then she saw them. Chad, Brett, and Kyle. They were taller, broader, with the confident paunch of men who peaked early and were determined to cling to that peak. Their varsity jackets, now laughably tight, were worn open over collared shirts. They held craft beers and held court. "Well, I'll be damned." Chad's voice cut through the murmur, loud and performative. The ghost of Oak Hill passed. Maya Jenkins in the flesh. He swaggered over, his friends flanking him like guards. "We weren't sure you'd show. Figured you'd be, I don't know, cataloging books or something." The circle around them tightened, the audience forming instantly. Maya managed a small smile. "Hello, Chad. You look the same." He barked a laugh. Yeah, well, some of us don't have to change. Success agrees with me. Regional sales director. What about you? Still living with your mom. The question was a dart aimed precisely. My mother passed away, Chad. 2 years ago. Her voice was quiet but clear. A flicker of something, not remorse but annoyance, crossed his face. Sorry to hear that. Tough break. But hey, you're here. That's what matters. Come on, let's get you a drink. You look like you could use one. His hand on her elbow was firm, steering her not toward the bar, but toward a more secluded area near the edge of the property, where the lawn sloped down toward a thicket of trees. The crowd followed, a murmuring, eager tide. This was the show they'd been promised. Brett produced a plastic cup filled with a dark, pungent liquid. Special punch for special guests. He grinned. It smelled of cheap vodka and regret. Kyle positioned himself behind her, a casual blockade. The jazz music seemed to fade away, replaced by the sound of Maya's own heartbeat in her ears. Chad began a loud, mocking toast. To the people who make us who we are! To the losers who make the winners look good! Laughter erupted. Someone shouted, Speech? Let her give a speech! Maya tried to step back, but Kyle nudged her forward. Go on, Maya. Tell us all about your amazing decade. We're dying to know. Her mouth was dry. She looked out at the faces, some gleeful, some uncomfortable, none intervening. I work at the county library. I'm happy there. The words sounded pathetic even to her. The library! Chad exploded with fake enthusiasm. Whoa, so you're like a superhero of silence. Did you get a degree in shushing? More laughter. The humiliation was a physical heat crawling up her neck. Then Brett, accidentally, bumped her arm, and the foul punch splashed down the front of her lavender dress, staining it a deep, ugly purple. Oops, Brett said, his eyes cold. Clumsy me. That's when Chad pushed her. It wasn't a hard shove, but it was enough, with the grass still damp from evening sprinklers, to make her feet slide out from under her. She fell hard, the impact jolting through her tailbone. The crowd gasped, but it was a gasp of thrill, not concern. And then Chad stepped closer and the kicking began. Not a wild, violent kick, but a taunting, prodding kick with the toe of his loafer against her ribs. Get up, loser. Come on, get up. Or is this where you belong? Brett and Kyle cheered, their laughter the soundtrack of her nightmare. Maya curled in on herself, the old, familiar shame washing over her, more intense than any pain. This was why she shouldn't have come. Some wounds never close, they just wait for the salt. And that's when the world changed. The thrumming that had been a distant background noise, easily mistaken for a bass line from the band, or a passing truck, suddenly swelled into a deafening, rhythmic whoomp, whoomp. The air itself began to vibrate. Glasses on the tables chattered. The jazz music died mid-note. Every head snapped upward. From over the line of trees, a shape emerged, black and angular, and utterly monstrous against the twilight sky. It was a helicopter, but unlike any civilian model. This was a machine of pure, predatory intent, an AH-64 Apache attack helicopter. Its blunt nose, its chain gun, its Hellfire missile pods were silhouetted against the deepening blue. The downdraft from its rotors was a hurricane, whipping tablecloths into the air, sending napkins flying, flattening the grass. The fairy lights swung wildly, casting crazy shadows. The Apache hovered for a moment, a dark avenging angel, then pivoted smoothly and began its descent toward the only open space large enough, the center of the Caldwell Estate's pristine, pudding green. The landing was a controlled cataclysm. The roar was overwhelming, drowning all thought. The guests stumbled back, hands over their ears, eyes wide with terror and disbelief. The Apache's engines whined down, the rotators slowing to a menacing sweep. The cockpit canopy hissed open. And then a figure emerged. Clad in an olive-green flight suit, helmet tucked under one arm, aviator sunglasses reflecting the chaotic scene, the pilot jumped down with a practiced, agile grace. The flight suit couldn't conceal the lean, strong frame, the aura of absolute authority. The pilot pulled off the sunglasses and a fall of dark, sweat-dampened hair tumbled free. She shook it out and began striding across the lawn, her boots making no sound on the grass, her gaze fixed ahead with laser intensity. It was Maya. But not the Maya they had just been kicking on the ground. This was a sculpture of confidence and power. Her face was the same, but etched with determination, her eyes sharp and missing nothing. The stained lavender dress was gone, replaced by the uniform of a warrior. She walked past the first stunned clusters of people. who parted before her like the Red Sea. She didn't look at them. Her path was straight and unerring toward Chad, Brett, and Kyle, who stood frozen, their faces slack with a confusion so deep it bordered on paralysis. Maya had risen to her knees, watching her own approach as if in a dream. The new Maya stopped a few feet from the trio. She didn't speak. She simply looked at them, her head tilted slightly, as if studying specimens under a glass. The silence was heavier than the rotor noise had been. Chad found his voice first, a squeak of bravado. "What the hell is this? A costume? You rent that thing? Jenkins." But his voice lacked all conviction. It trembled. Maya's lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. "Chad, Brett, Kyle," she said each name like a fact, not a greeting. "I got your invitation. Sorry I'm late. Had a prior engagement." She glanced past them at her former self still on the ground. Her expression softened, just for a millisecond. Then she focused back on the bullies. The kicking, that was new. High school was mostly psychological warfare. "I see you've expanded your repertoire." Brett stammered. This is a stunt. You can't just land of a military helicopter on private property." "I can when I'm on active duty and following orders for a demonstration flight." Maya said, her voice calm, clear, and carrying to every ear. "Captain Maya Jenkins, United States Army Aviation. That's my Apache." "Well, the Army's. But I fly her." She let that sink in. The gasps this time were of awe. "I was in the area. Thought I'd drop in, Kyle." Always the follower, found a pathetic thread of defiance. "So what? You're a pilot now. Big deal. You still fell for our little joke. You still came here to be laughed at." Maya took a step closer. The physical space she commanded was immense. "I came here," she said slowly, "because for 10 years, the memory of you three has been a weight I carried. I thought if I saw you, I'd see that you were just men. Small men. And I was right." She looked at Chad, directly into his eyes. "Regional sales director. That's cute. I lead a team of aviators who defend the airspace of an entire continent. You sell paper. I tell you fire." She used the Chinese word deliberately, knowing he wouldn't understand, a subtle reversal of their old intellectual bullying. Chad's face flushed crimson. "You think you're better than us?" "I don't think about you at all," Maya said, and it was the most devastating truth she could have uttered. "Not anymore. But seeing you today, seeing that nothing has changed for you, it was clarifying. You're stuck in 2015. I've been to 3 countries, learned 2 languages, saved lives, and yes, cataloged a few books in my spare time. The class loser, you defined that?" "I redefined it." She turned her back on them, a gesture of supreme dismissal, and walked to where her past self still sat. She extended a hand. "Get up, Maya," she said, not to the crowd, but to the woman on the ground. "You don't belong down there." The Maya on the ground looked at the hand, then into the eyes of the pilot who was her future. She took it. The pilot pulled her up with effortless strength. For a moment, the 2 Mayas stood together. The vulnerable woman in the stained dress and the warrior in the flight suit. Then, the pilot leaned in and whispered something only the 2 of them could hear. The Maya in the lavender dress nodded, a tear tracing a clean path through the punch stain on her cheek, but her spine straightened. The pilot, Captain Jenkins, addressed the crowd now, her voice ringing out. "I apologize for the dramatic entrance. I hope it didn't ruin the canapes. Some of you were kind in school, I remember. Thank you. As for the rest, have a lovely evening." She gave a crisp, almost imperceptible nod, then turned and began striding back toward the Apache. Chad, humiliated beyond bearing, made one last, stupid mistake. He lunged forward not at the captain, but at the Maya in the dress, grabbing her arm. "You're not just walking away! This is my event! You ruin everything?" Before Maya could react, Captain Jenkins spun on her heel. In 2 strides, she was there. Her hand shot out, not in a punch, but in a controlled, military restraint move, twisting Chad's wrist and forcing him to his knees with a yelp of pain. She held him there, effortlessly. "You laid hands on a civilian," she said, her voice ice. "That's assault. I have 24 witnesses. And I have a loaded 30mm chain gun that's currently pointed away from us, but my co-pilot back there is very protective." She released him with a shove. "Sit down, Chad. The show's over." She didn't wait for a response. She linked her arm with the Maya in the lavender dress and guided her toward the helicopter. She helped her up into the front cockpit, then climbed in behind her. The canopy closed. The engines whined to life, the rotors beginning their terrible, beautiful sweep. The Apache lifted off, hovering for a moment, turning so the cockpit faced the party. Through the glass, they could see Captain Maya Jenkins give a final, slow salute. Then the helicopter rose, banked, and disappeared into the night, the sound of its rotors fading into a memory. The pudding green was a scarred mess. The reunion was in ruins. Chad, Brett, and Kyle stood isolated, the crowd now looking at them with a mixture of pity and disgust. The myth of their invincibility was shattered, replaced by the indelible image of their cowardice. The class loser hadn't just shown up, she had conquered, and she had left them in the dust of her downdraft. The story doesn't end on the pudding green. The Maya in the lavender dress, whose name was indeed still Maya, spent the helicopter ride in stunned silence, looking out at the world from a throne of steel and power. Captain Jenkins landed at a nearby military base. Over coffee in a quiet mess hall, the two women talked, not as two people, but as one person reconciling her past with her present. The captain explained that after high school, she joined the army on a whim, a desperate escape. She found discipline, purpose, and a family. She thrived. She fought through every prejudice, every doubt, to become one of the few female Apache pilots in the world. The library job was her weekend sanctuary, a place of peace. The invitation had sparked not fear, but a strategic plan. She would attend, but on her terms, in her own time, and she would ensure her past self saw what was possible. The reunion. Maya went home that night, not by bus, but in a staff car arranged by the base. She washed the stained dress, but she didn't throw it away. She kept it as a reminder. A week later, she enrolled in night classes. She didn't become a pilot, but she found her own strength. The experience had been a catalyst, a violent, beautiful injection of courage. She learned that the girl who was kicked on the grass and the woman who flew the helicopter were the same person. One just needed time to find her wings. Captain Maya Jenkins continued to serve, her story becoming a quiet legend among her squadron. She never spoke of the reunion again. She had said all she needed to say, the bullies. Their social capital evaporated overnight. Chad's sales director position became untenable as the story leaked. No one respects a man who kicks women. Brett and Kyle faded into obscurity, their friendship fractured by mutual blame. The 10-year reunion of Oak Hill High became infamous, a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating the quiet ones. This is a story about time and how it doesn't heal all wounds. Sometimes it forges them into weapons. It's about the ultimate revenge, which isn't cruelty, but transcendent success. It's about the moment the loser becomes the hero and the bullies become the footnote. It's about the power of a single, defiant choice to rise, whether from a damp lawn or from the ashes of a painful past. The Apache was just the exclamation point. From which part of the country are you watching this video? Let us know in the comments below. Your stories of resilience and comeback are what make this community so powerful.